Have you ever stood in front of the mirror on a quiet morning, your hair brushed, a touch of lipstick, everything in place, and still felt like something just wasn't quite right? Not a big flaw, not sadness, just a pause in your own reflection. Maybe it's the haircut you've had for years, one that once made you feel bold, sharp, confident. But now, as your face has shifted with time, that same style feels like it's holding on to a version of you that doesn't quite fit anymore. It's not lifting you up. It's gently erasing you. And maybe no one else sees it. But you do. If any part of you has quietly whispered, "I've changed, but my hair hasn't," this video is for you. Because what's aging, you might not be time itself, but a haircut that no longer reflects the woman you've grown into. Mistake 1. The ghost of the past, cut. She looked in the mirror this morning, not in a rush, not sad, just paused a little longer than usual. The reflection staring back was achingly familiar, shoulder-length hair with soft bangs curling in toward the face. A style that had been with her since she was 38 back, when she was confident, radiant, the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered. Back then, her hair was a statement. It spoke of sharpness, boldness, an effortless allure that needed no explanation. And today, though every strand still fell into place, though the silhouette was exactly as it used to be, something had shifted. Not in the hair, but in how it existed on her face now. The hair no longer framed her features the way it once did. What once preserved a youthful charm had quietly become a frame for an old photograph. And inside that frame, she no longer saw herself. Just a version that had stopped in time, neither moving forward nor back, just quietly frozen. The problem wasn't that the haircut was wrong. It's that it was no longer right. There's something women are rarely told. Our faces don't just change because of age. They change because of everything we've lived through. The years of raising children, sleepless nights, dreams built and rebuilt. All of it leaves a mark. After 60, our features aren't as sharp, but they're softer, gentler, more vivid in a different way. The jawline isn't as defined. The cheeks aren't as full as they were at 30. And when these changes appear, our hair must shift too, not to make us look younger, but to stay in harmony with who we are now. A once beautiful haircut can feel stiff, dated, even harsh, not because it's bad, but because it no longer speaks to our present face. When bangs are cut too bluntly, when the part is too fixed, when all the layering is gone, movement disappears from the hair, and light disappears from the face. And here's the strange magic. Sometimes the smallest shift changes everything. A slightly off-center part can soften the gaze. A subtle layer grazing the cheek can bring back the fullness the face quietly longs for. Cut the bangs again, but this time, don't hold them in place. Let them fall softly, loosely, naturally. Let your hair stop being a rigid frame and instead become a sheer veil that moves gently with every step. A beautiful haircut after 60 isn't one that tries to take us back in time. It's one that lets us fully arrive here now as the woman we've become. Evelyn, 62 years old, didn't cut all her old hair away. She simply shifted her part ever so slightly, added a soft layer around her cheeks, and let her bangs fall just enough to kiss her eyebrows. When she looked in the mirror again, she didn't say a word. But this time, her eyes didn't stop at her hair. They landed on herself. And she smiled. Just a little. We don't have to abandon the things that once made us feel beautiful. But sometimes, loosening our grip is enough to find our way back, not to who we were, but to who we've become. And then there are some haircuts that don't hold us back. They're just too heavy. So heavy that, over the years, they no longer rest on our shoulders, but weigh down the way we see ourselves. Mistake 2. The weight of long, lifeless hair. Joan had always loved her long hair. Through all the years of raising 3 children, running a household, and working full-time at the local bookstore, she kept it long, smooth, and thick as a quiet kind of signature, a silent piece of her identity. Every morning as she brushed it, there was still a trace of femininity she could hold on to, a softness she thought hadn't changed. But what she hadn't noticed was that her hair had changed. Not dramatically. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, strand by strand. One day, standing in front of the mirror adjusting her collar before heading out, she suddenly saw it, the same long hair, still flowing straight down, no longer looked gentle. It weighed on her narrow shoulders. It pulled her face downward, as if something was being held in place, something even she couldn't name. Her hair was no longer moving with her. It was holding her back. Many women keep their hair long after 60 out of fear. Not fear of shortcuts, but fear of losing that sense of being a woman. But what no one tells us is this: femininity doesn't live in length. It lives in aliveness. When hair becomes too long, without layers, without movement, it turns into something heavy. And that weight, literal and emotional, drains the energy from our face. It's as if every bit of brightness is pulled down by the very length we thought made us beautiful. The neck, one of the most telling areas of aging, is now hidden behind a dark curtain, giving the eyes nowhere to rest. Everything begins to slide downward: the light, the spirit, the presence. Joan didn't need to go short. What she needed was intention. Her stylist offered one gentle idea: start layering from the cheekbones, not to erase the length, but to bring the hair back to life. Keep the ends around the shoulders, not to cut her off from what felt familiar, but to carve space around her neck and jawline. With every layer added, the hair had a chance to move, to lift, to sway again, like a conversation between her face and the woman wearing it. And Joan, the woman who once believed long hair was inseparable from who she was, walked out of the salon that day not feeling like she had lost anything. In fact, she whispered something soft, yet unmistakable: "I feel like I can breathe again." Because hair, whether long or short, should feel light. Not just on your shoulders, but in your mind. But sometimes, lightness isn't enough. Because if a cut becomes too neat, too sharp, too symmetrical, it risks becoming a shape with no room for softness. And that's the story of those so-called perfect cuts. The ones that leave your face feeling frozen in place. Mistake 3. The harsh geometry. Linda used to be a lawyer, and just like her profession, everything around her was always in perfect order. Shoes lined up straight in the closet. Morning coffee with exactly 1 spoon of cream, no more, no less. And her hair, a sharply structured bob, chin length, cut as if with a ruler, had been part of her identity for nearly 15 years. That haircut once made her feel powerful, professional, in control. But at 64, after retiring and moving to a small coastal town, Linda began to feel disconnected from the woman in the mirror. It wasn't that she disliked her hair, it's that it made her face look locked in place, framed tightly by the very precision she had once prided herself on. Those clean lines, instead of enhancing her, now seemed to constrain a face that was softening with time. And the strange thing was, bit by bit, she felt herself disappearing. As if all the movement of expression, of memory, of warmth in her gaze was being halted right at the edge of her hairline. This is what often happens with cuts that are too correct. At this age, our bone structure shifts. The jaw softens, the cheeks relax, and the area around the eyes craves lift through movement, not through hard, static lines. A sharply symmetrical cut only highlights what we're quietly trying to soften: the fading jawline, the fine lines near the mouth, the subtle asymmetries we never noticed in our younger years. Beauty after 60 isn't about precision. It's about breadth, about allowing hair to be soft, slightly off-center, and alive with the face it surrounds. Linda's stylist didn't change her entire cut. They simply softened the outline, no longer a razor-sharp edge, but a gentle ripple, like wind brushing the surface of water. The ends were left slightly uneven, longer in the front, to add dimension and movement. And with just a hint of wave, the hair no longer sat still, it responded to every tilt of the head. To the quiet way Linda smiled. And for the first time in years, she no longer felt like a sculpture sitting behind a desk. She saw herself walking through the late afternoon sun, hearing music from a nearby shop, catching the scent of cinnamon from a corner cafe. There was life in that face now, life her old haircut had unknowingly muted. We don't need to reshape our face to match a haircut. We simply need the hair to soften, to move, to make room for light to pass through. But sometimes, what blocks the light isn't the haircut itself. It's the fact that we've cut too much and left too little space to be gentle with ourselves. Mistake 4, the too short chop. Clara was never afraid of change. She'd moved homes 3 times in a decade, taken up salsa dancing at 58, and still drove long stretches of highway solo without hesitation. But there was one thing she had never dared to do: go short with her hair. That is, until the day she came across an article with a headline that felt less like advice and more like a commandment. Women over 50 should cut their hair short, not a suggestion. An unspoken rule. She walked into the salon without a second thought, without a single question. Just nodded when the stylist asked, "Chop it all off, right?" Yes, and within minutes, what once gently framed her face, the strands that brushed the nape of her neck, that fell softly when she tilted her head to laugh, now lay scattered on the floor. The new haircut was undeniably neat. But when Clara looked in the mirror, something felt cold. There was nothing left to soften the gaze. No strand fell across her cheek. Nothing to veil the new lines at her neck or soften the firmer angle her jaw had taken on after 60. The haircut wasn't wrong, but it had severed Clara from her own sense of feeling. A crop that's too short when not designed with intention tends to expose the entire bone structure, right at a time when that structure needs softening. The edges that once spoke of youth can begin to feel rigid. With no bangs, no gentle curve around the face, everything feels bare, and in that starkness, a woman can easily feel lost inside herself. Not every shortcut leads to that, but short hair needs a strategy, not surrender. Clara went back to the salon again. This time, she didn't apologize for wanting short hair, but she spoke with more clarity. "I want softness. I want something that embraces me." Her stylist suggested a pixie, but not the tight, cropped to the scalp kind. Instead, a feathered pixie with soft, airy layers and a fringe that swept lightly across her forehead, just long enough to graze her eyes, not hide them. Those delicate layers didn't just bring movement, they brought comfort. Something gentler, closer. A place for the light to land as it fell across a face that had earned its contours. And Clara, with that intentionally short haircut, said something soft but deeply heard. "I don't want tidy. I want tender." Because women don't have to leave long hair behind just to step into a new chapter. They simply need a cut short or otherwise that knows how to embrace the present without erasing it. And sometimes it's not that we cut off too much, it's that we end up hiding too much. Not with long hair, but with something deceptively innocent, a set of blunt bangs that, in truth, may be blocking more than just our forehead. Sometimes they block the view into who we really are. Mistake 5, the bangs trap. Gina was always the one who lit up the room with laughter. At 55, she still loved crowded dinner parties, local line dancing nights, and the way her earrings shimmered when she tilted her head mid-story. But there was one quiet thing that always lingered in her mind, those faint lines beginning to form across her forehead. "Just to cover it up a little," she said when she decided to get blunt bangs. The stylist didn't ask much, just nodded and delivered a clean, sharp cut, thick, heavy, perfectly straight. And when Gina looked up, she smiled, seeing her forehead hidden. But not long after, she realized something else had been hidden too, the light in her eyes. Instead of looking younger, her face now seemed divided. The bangs, too thick and too blunt, drew a harsh horizontal line across her face, cutting through the softness that was so naturally hers, from her easy smile to the spark in her gaze. Friends stopped saying, "You look radiant," and started asking, "Did you change your hair?" The shift was subtle, but enough to make Gina feel like she had disappeared behind something. Because blunt bangs, especially when thick and heavy, don't just cover the forehead. They block the light. They shorten the face, weighing down its center. And, in doing so, they disrupt the natural flow of light, from the forehead to the cheeks, down the nose, and through the eyes. The face becomes visually split in two, with no place for the gaze to settle, trapped in the shadow beneath the fringe. When women choose blunt bangs out of a desire to hide something they're not ready to face, they often end up blocking what was meant to shine through, like warmth, vitality, or the expressiveness of eyes that know how to tell stories. At her next appointment, Gina sat down and whispered, "I don't want to be hidden anymore." Her stylist suggested something different. Curtain bangs light, naturally parted, falling softly to either side like a sheared drape pulled back. As they cut, they kept the centerpieces longer and the outer edges thinner, so the hair wouldn't conceal but instead guide the light. And, almost instantly, Gina's eyes lit up again, like someone had gently pulled back the fog and whispered, "I see you now." The new fringe wasn't meant to cover the forehead, it was there to welcome attention, to lift and frame her features, instead of hiding them. Gina looked at herself in the mirror for a long time that day. She didn't say much, just tilted her head slightly, letting the fringe sway softly with the motion, as if it was telling a story that had been tucked away too long. But sometimes what makes the face appear stiff and lifeless isn't the cut, or the part. It's the color when it's too dark, too flat, too dense. The hair stops being a flow of light and turns into a heavy, still curtain where beauty can no longer breathe. Mistake 6. The flat color trap. Sylvia knew her hair color so well, she could pick the dye box from the shelf by feel alone. No need to check the label. For nearly a decade, she had stayed loyal to a single shade, jet black. A color she once connected with her most radiant, powerful, magnetic self. In the beginning, it was like armor. Every time gray roots peeked through, she'd re-dye them, clinging tightly to the memory of a time when she felt most beautiful. But as the seasons passed, something started to shift. Not in the hair, but in how she felt each time she looked in the mirror after coloring it. The hair looked right, but something in it no longer felt alive. That deep black, once bold and commanding, had turned into a heavy veil. It no longer caught light. It no longer moved with the sun. It sat like a helmet on her head, casting shadows over her face, making her features feel weighty and fixed. And, when she smiled, it wasn't that the smile wasn't beautiful, it just got lost in a look that no longer reflected the warmth inside her. Technically, it was called a flat monochrome tone, no highlights, no lowlights, no tonal dimension. But for women after 60, it's not just a color, it's a feeling of being covered. No light finds its way in. No movement in the strands. No depth. The darker the hair, the more the face is pulled into shadow. And at an age when skin needs lifting and light is essential, too heavy color, especially pure black or flat, dark brown, exaggerates fine lines, dulls the complexion, and makes even healthy hair look lifeless. Sylvia couldn't quite name why she felt stifled until she sat down with a new stylist. They didn't talk about age. They simply asked, "Would you like your hair to breathe again?" And from that question, everything softened. They didn't strip the color. Instead, they lightened the roots, easing the jet black into a more dimensional ash brown. Then, they added thin caramel highlights, carefully placed around the fringe and crown where natural light most often lands. The back wasn't forgotten. They wove in subtle champagne beige lowlights, giving the hair movement every time Sylvia turned her head. When the light hit her hair afterward, she no longer saw color. She saw light dancing like each strand had finally awakened from a long sleep. And Sylvia, once bound to black as if by oath, whispered gently as she left the salon, "This color doesn't make me look younger. It just makes me feel seen. Warmer, truer. Because after 60, we don't need hair to hide us. We need hair that's light enough, clear enough, and deep enough to reflect the woman we've become." There is no such thing as a wrong haircut, only choices that have stopped reflecting who we are. And when we're ready to change just one detail, a soft layer, a shifted part, a touch of light in the color, we're not simply refreshing the outside. We're calling ourselves back. Not back to the past, but back to now. To the woman who is still alive, still radiant, still fully here. Maybe even now, you're still wearing the same haircut, still coloring it the same shade, still parting it the way you've done for decades, not because you're afraid of change, but because no one ever truly asked, do you still feel beautiful in that style? If something in today's video made you pause, a detail, a story, or just a reflection that reminded you of how radiant you once felt, then maybe the most beautiful part of you is still waiting to return. If you've ever tried one of the small shifts we talked about today, just leave a 1 below. If not yet, 0 is enough. I read every single one, and I'll understand. And if one day you'd like me to share more, Not about mistakes, but about haircuts that lift your cheekbones, brighten your eyes, and bring you back to the woman you recognize in the mirror. Just leave a few words. Enough for me to know you're still here. And if today something inside you softened a little, lightened just a bit, then I'm still here too. Whenever you feel like returning, not to tell you what to do, but to gently remind you how radiant you once were and still can be.